part of our program. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back. In the first half, Americans accused the Scottish legal authorities of rewarding a top terrorist with an early release and a touching family reunion. In the second half, we shall discuss why Mr. Bernanke, who has just been reappointed by President Obama for another term of the Federal Reserve, is said to be a reward for failure. Joining us here in the Beijing studio live is Mr. Charles Liu, managing partner of the How Capital. But first, let's look at this footage to update you about what's going on in this area.
President Barack Obama nominates Ben Bernanke to a second term as chairman of the Federal Reserve, crediting him with heading off another Great Depression. Many economists agree it was the arsenal of programs unleashed by Bernanke in the depth of global financial crisis that helped soothe global markets. Wharton finance professor Jeremy Siegel.
You know, the market is up 50% from its lows. The payroll decline has certainly slowed down. I mean, we all see the changes that have taken place. So, you know, we have a lot of information that tells us Bernanke's moves have been very, very good.
Wall Street seemed to agree with Obama's decision, posting gains across the board. David Ressler of Nomura Securities.
I think the continuity of the chairmanship being maintained by Mr. Bernanke is going to be a big plus to the markets. It's one less thing we have to worry about.
Bernanke's reappointment follows a year of rapid-fire moves. Along with former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, he made unprecedented decisions at the height of last year's crisis that reshaped the U.S. financial landscape. He put taxpayer money at risk, arranging the fire sale of investment bank Bear Stearns in March of 2008, then allowed Lehman Brothers to fall into bankruptcy. But just days later, he committed tens of billions of dollars to save failing insurer AIG, arguing it was too big to fail. Facing frozen credit markets, Bernanke brought interest rates effectively down to zero and flooded the banking system with money from an array of new lending programs. He continues to boost the fixed income market with programs to buy mortgage-backed securities, weighing down the Fed's books with risky assets. Now he must keep the recovery on track. Assuming his renomination is approved by the U.S. Senate, Bernanke will need to develop an exit strategy from all of the emergency government programs and get interest rates back to more normal levels, all while keeping a keen eye on the slowly recovering U.S. economy. Bobby Rebell, Reuters, New York.
Welcome back to the studio discussion. Welcome to our program, Charles Liu. During the run-up to the congressional hearing and the approval by the Senate about the reappointment of Mr. Ben Bernanke as chairman of the Federal Reserve Central Bank of the U.S., a lot of questions remain to be asked. For example, does this man deserve all the credits for reshaping the American financial roadmap or putting brakes on the free fall of American economy? What's your view?
When the announcement was made yesterday, there was an interesting comment by one of the top economists in the world. This is someone who helped create cancer in a patient, and then in the preliminary phases of treatment has brought some good results and is being praised for having brought this result. There's no question that Bernanke followed Alan Greenspan's policies and follies of creating the bubbles that brought to the financial crisis, and he is seriously responsible. And he's... Excuse
me, are you saying he deliberately created all the bubbles?
No. Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke...
Alan Greenspan denied that there have been ever any bubbles in the financial market.
Well, absolutely. He denied it. When you have the bubble of the internet period in the financial markets, you have mortgages that were above the market value of homes. You have, over the years, what have been created by them is actually a Federal Reserve that believe that bubbles are... When music continues, people continue to dance. So they did not look at creating bubbles as part of their responsibility, or dealing with the creation of the bubbles as part of their responsibility. They only were supposed to be there to do the mop-up.
And should Mr. Ben Bernanke be held accountable and responsible for the devastating financial meltdown?
He was partly responsible. He believed in the same theories as Alan Greenspan. For example, efficient market means when things go wrong, the market will correct itself. Now we see who's doing the correction. It's Federal Reserve and the Treasury.
And why did he have this very rapid U-turn by overseeing and exercising so many interventionist policies?
He had no choice. He was, if you looked at all the measures that were taken, it is basically taking money or taking assets and value out of the society to support the banks. Because basically, what does it mean to have zero interest rate? It means zero interest rate for the banks to get money and then to lend it out at high interest rates, 4.5%, 5%, 6%, 7%, or in credit cards terms is over 20%. This is one way for them to fill the coffers of the bank or to plug the holes that were created by bankers. And the whole concept of too big to fail means now we have all these institutions in the US which are too big to fail, which means the taxpayers in the US at least will be responsible for continuing its, even if it's very, very bad operations, continuing its livelihood.
And do you think he will be able to inject a lot of liquidity into the market?
He has injected massive amounts. The expression quantitative easing is something created by the Fed. It means printing money. What does quantitative easing mean? This is Bernanke's expression. It means for the Federal Reserve to buy Treasury bills issued by the US Treasury, which is basically printing money. And you see already the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve has reached well over $2 trillion, which is what the banks put on deposit to borrow money from the Federal Reserve. But what is in the collateral, what is in the security that's been placed with the Federal Reserve is very questionable.
And do you think he deliberately created inflation? That's part of his theory before he took over from Mr. Alan Greenspan.
I don't think he was creating inflation. I think he sincerely believed the Federal Reserve's role is to deal with the inflationary issues rather than dealing with the bubble issues. He felt possibly that there may be issues coming up, but he didn't address the bubbles. He did not address, as Paul Volcker did, the dangers that was creeping up very quickly on the financial system.
Well, he is criticized for encouraging deregulations, but now he strongly encourages interventionist policies. And now he's calling for and pledging a strong and independent Federal Reserve. At the same time, the White House is talking loudly about whether the Federal Reserve should be held responsible for overseeing the transparency of the financial market. What do you think of the pros and cons here?
I think there are two aspects to this. One is the theoretical aspect, and one is the aspect of in practice. The Federal Reserve, if you look at Geithner when he was chairman of the Federal Reserve of New York, that actually implemented the various plans to save the financial institutions, he is in very, use the American expression, in very tight with a lot of financial institutions in New York. So in practice, whatever theory you come up with, in practice, Washington, the Federal Reserve, the White House, and so on and so forth, are keen on maintaining the going-ons of the financial institutions of America, because it's so important for the American economy. Because if you look at theory, Bernanke, for those of us in Asia, or we are practitioners in Asia, it is humiliating to hear him say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. In Asia, we certainly have a different feeling about the reappointment, and this guy blamed Asians for too much savings while talking nothing about the high and excessive spending of the American consumers. I hope the financial crisis has put an end to the very questionable shopping habits of the Americans. So with that, we come to the end of the second half of the program, brought to you from Beijing Live. I'm Yang Rui. Goodbye.